I'm not the kind of man people notice in a room. I've learned to live with that. In every office I've worked in, I was the steady background piece. Reliable, quiet, the guy who remembers deadlines and holds doors open. When I say I never expected to overhear my manager planning to humiliate me, I don't mean I thought he was a saint. I just thought I was too boring to be worth targeting. If anything, that night showed me exactly how wrong I'd been about what people find entertaining. The dinner wasn't supposed to be a big deal. It was the core team gathering before the New Year's party. Our manager Mark, his favorites, a couple of HR people, and me, because I handled most of the year-end reports. The restaurant was the kind that tries too hard to feel expensive. Low lights, tall glasses, too many forks. I arrived early, nodded through small talk, and took my usual seat near the edge of the table, close enough to participate if spoken to, far enough to disappear if no one bothered. Mark walked in late, as always, laughing before he even reached the table, already the loudest person in the room. He slapped a hand on my shoulder like I was an old friend instead of an employee who made his spreadsheets look functional. "Here he is, the man of the hour," he said, even though I wasn't. Everyone laughed. I smiled because that's what you do when a boss plays harmless king. Dinner went the way it always went. Mark bragged about the year's wins as if he alone had produced them. The HR rep, Olivia, nodded like she was being paid per smile. A couple of colleagues tried to impress him with stories that didn't interest anyone. I listened, contributed where necessary, and kept mostly quiet. That's how I survive office dinners. Blend in, don't draw attention, don't give anyone a reason to remember you. About halfway through, I excused myself to the restroom. The hallway curved around the private dining rooms, and as I was returning, I heard laughter echoing from behind a half-closed door. It wasn't the typical restaurant noise. It was too familiar. Mark's laugh, sharp and theatrical, followed by Olivia's softer one, and another voice I recognized as Jason's, one of Mark's favorite people to drink with after hours. I didn't mean to stop walking. I just froze because my name came out of Mark's mouth like a punchline. "No, seriously," he was saying. "The best part is he won't see it coming. He'll think it's some harmless year-end slideshow, and then, boom, we hit him with the dating slide. The panic attack moment. The Most Improved Social Skills Award. People are going to lose it." Olivia laughed too loudly. "We just need to make sure nobody from corporate is watching too closely. You know how they get about harassment optics. But honestly, it's tradition. Every year someone gets roasted. This time it's just him." Jason snorted. "You should add that photo he posted a few years ago. The one with the terrible haircut. It's gold." Mark lowered his voice, but the wall carried it. "The guy practically begs for it. He's paranoid about public speaking. He jumps when someone mentions his ex, and he's awkward enough that half the room won't know if he's joking when he gets flustered. It'll kill." Another wave of laughter. My stomach tightened. Not sharply, but slowly, like someone was turning a knob inside me. I stood there with my hand halfway lifted toward the doorframe, as if touching it would make the voices stop. It didn't. Olivia cleared her throat. "Just make sure you don't mention the salary stuff. That's where we get in trouble." "Oh, please," Mark said. "It's harmless. Besides, everyone knows he's underpaid. Maybe this will motivate him." More laughter, then a clink of glasses. The tone wasn't playful. It wasn't teasing among friends. It was the way people talk when the subject isn't in the room and never supposed to know. For a moment I wondered if I'd misheard, if they were talking about someone else. But the haircut photo, the panic attack, my breakup, it was me. All of it was me. I stepped back before they could notice my shadow through the crack. I didn't want to stand there anymore, but I didn't want to walk back to the table either. My chest felt tight, not in the dramatic panic attack way, just a slow, spreading burn that made it hard to breathe normally. I didn't know which part bothered me more, that they planned to humiliate me in front of the whole company at the New Year's party, or that they were so comfortable plotting it that they didn't bother lowering their voices. I returned to the table and sat down. The food had arrived. People were smiling, eating, sipping wine. Mark glanced at me and grinned, oblivious to the fact that I had heard every word. "You good?" he asked, like the friendly boss he pretended to be. "Yeah," I said. "Fine." I picked up my fork, but my hands didn't feel like mine. Conversations washed around me, muted and meaningless. The restaurant lights were dim, but suddenly I saw the whole team with too much clarity. Who laughed hardest at Mark's jokes? Who kept quiet? Who tried to impress him? Who feared losing his approval? And myself, sitting right there among them, the easy target, the compliant one, the guy who never made trouble. For years I had thought smiling through moments like this made me professional, mature. But as I sat there, listening to Mark's voice bounce around the table like it owned the place, something settled in me. Not anger, not fear. Something quieter. A line I didn't know I'd been carrying until it finally snapped into place. If they wanted a performance at the New Year's party, fine. I'd give them one. Just not the one they were expecting. The next morning, nothing in the office looked different, but everything felt off. Same gray carpet, same stale coffee, same buzzing strip lights that made everyone look a little sick. Mark walked in whistling, dropping his bag at his desk like he hadn't spent the previous night planning my public execution. That was the part that stuck with me, how easy it was for him, for them, like I was just a joke waiting to be scheduled. He slid into my line of sight around 10, leaning on the partition between our desks. "Big push before the new year, champ," he said. "You ready for the party? We've got something special lined up this year." If he was testing me, I didn't give him much. I looked up from my screen, met his eyes, and kept my voice level. "I'm sure you do." He laughed, clapped the partition twice, and moved on. In the past, I would have smiled or asked a polite question just to keep things smooth. This time, I let the silence sit there between us, heavier than it had any right to be. The first thing I did that day wasn't work. It was memory. I opened a blank email, addressed it to my personal account, and typed out everything I'd heard at the restaurant while it was still sharp. Who was in the room? Their words, the jokes, the tone. I added the time, the layout, even the way Olivia had said harassment optics, like it was an inconvenience rather than a warning. I hit send. The timestamp landed in my inbox like a small anchor. Then I went through my chat history with Mark in HR. I found the message where he'd asked me, "Off the record, any funny stories from your last presentation meltdown might help people relate to you at the party." At the time, I'd answered carefully, assuming he wanted to make me look more human. Now I saw it for what it was, someone shopping for props. I screenshotted the chat, forwarded that too. It sounds paranoid when you describe it out loud. Emailing yourself, saving screenshots, writing down conversations. But paranoia is what they accuse you of when they don't want to admit you've noticed a pattern. Around lunch, I walked to HR under the pretense of asking about vacation rollover. Olivia smiled when I stepped in. "Grant, hey, what can I do for you?" I closed the door behind me. That got her attention. "Quick question," I said. "I wanted to clarify something about the New Year's party." Her smile went professional. "Sure." "I know you like to do awards," I continued. "Skits, laughs, that kind of thing. I'm not comfortable being the center of a roast. I'm telling you now so there's no misunderstanding later." Her eyes flickered just long enough to tell me I'd hit something. "Oh," she said lightly. "It's all in good fun. You know how these things are." "I know how harassment policies read," I said. My tone stayed calm. "I'm not signing up to be a punchline. If you're planning anything that uses personal information I shared in confidence, or medical stuff, I'm saying no in advance." She leaned back, crossed her arms. "Grant, no one is trying to hurt you. Mark just likes to keep morale up. People love the tradition." "Then pick someone who loves it," I replied. "I don't. Consider this my formal statement." For a moment something sharp passed over her face, like annoyance that I wasn't playing along. Then it was gone. "I'll make a note. she said, tapping her keyboard. Don't worry so much. I walked out of her office knowing two things. One, she wasn't going to stop him. Two, she'd just given me another timestamp. But that was just the beginning. 2 days later, I got copied on an email I wasn't supposed to see. It was one of those lazy CC mistakes that only happen when people are too comfortable. The subject line was, Party Agenda, Final Draft, and it came from someone in events. I opened it out of habit. Halfway down the list of bullet points, my eyes snagged on one item. 9:20 p.m. The Grant Experience. Lighthearted look back on the year, hosted by Mark. There was no description beyond that. It didn't need one. I stared at the words until the screen blurred, then I took a slow breath and printed the page. No drama, no panic. I folded the paper in thirds and slid it into my notebook. That afternoon, Mark stopped by my desk again. Got your suit ready? He asked. There might be a spotlight involved. I turned my chair toward him. If you're planning to put me on stage, you should know I spoke to HR about it. Something flickered in his eyes, then smoothed over. Already? Man, you are allergic to fun? I'm allergic to being mocked with my own medical history, I said. So yeah, I'm setting some boundaries. He chuckled, but it sounded thinner this time. Relax, Grant. You'll thank me afterward. I doubt it. He left with a shrug, but the easy confidence wasn't quite the same. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt awake. The micro win came a day later, and it didn't even involve me directly. We were in a team meeting going over end-of-year numbers. An intern named Mia stumbled over a slide, mixing up two figures. Her face went red instantly. Mark pounced. Whoa, he said loudly. Good thing we don't let the interns handle real money, huh? A few people snickered. Mia's shoulders sank. Normally, I would have kept my head down, told myself it wasn't my business. This time I looked up. Actually, I said, that's my typo. I sent her the wrong version of the sheet. If you're going to roast someone, pick the right target. The room went quiet for a second. Mark's smile froze. Mia's eyes flicked toward me, confused. Mark cleared his throat. Well, there you go. Even the best make mistakes, folks. Nobody laughed. The moment slid past, but it left a visible scratch behind. Later, in the hallway, Mia caught up to me. Thank you, she said quietly. For that? I shrugged. It was my error anyway. We both knew it hadn't been. That wasn't the point. That night, sitting alone at my kitchen table with the lights off and the hum of the fridge in the background, I called a number I found online, a worker rights helpline. It wasn't some dramatic legal firm, just a tired-sounding man with a calm voice who listened while I laid out the facts. The jokes, the planned roast, the HR conversation, the agenda. He didn't gasp or call it a scandal. He just asked questions. Do I have anything in writing? Yes. Have you told them explicitly you're not comfortable? Yes. Do you believe this is retaliatory or targeted? I paused, then said yes again. Okay, he said finally. Document everything. Don't threaten anyone. Don't record people illegally. Don't escalate in the room. If this goes ahead, despite your objections, you'll have a harassment case and evidence they ignored your boundaries. Sometimes the cleanest move is to let them show you who they are, while you keep the receipts. It wasn't the superhero answer part of me wanted. There was no burst into the party and shout your rights solution, but it was real. It was adult. I hung up with a simple plan in my head. Stop trying to convince them to respect me, and start acting like the only person in the building who did. The next morning I adjusted what I wore. Not my clothes, my face. When Mark made a crack about me needing liquid courage for the big night, I didn't chuckle or look away. I just watched him until his smile faltered for half a second. He rolled his eyes and moved on. Olivia avoided meeting my gaze in the break room. By the end of that week, I had emails, screenshots, a printed agenda, and a dated note from HR where I'd explicitly said no. I didn't have power, not in the way they did. But I had something they obviously didn't think I'd ever use, a line I was finally willing to draw. But I didn't know it yet. But that decision would cost them a lot more than one ruined joke. The week before the New Year's party moved strangely. Slow in the mornings, fast at night, like the hours were tilting forward. Nobody said anything openly, but I could feel the shift. People who usually joked loudly around Mark were quieter, watching him the way animals watch each other before a storm. He didn't notice. Men like him never do. He thought he still owned the room. I spent those days preparing without looking like I was preparing. I saved the emails again, this time to a secure drive. I printed the agenda twice. I updated my notes with dates and names. No dramatics, no angry speeches. Just organizing the truth so that when it finally landed, it would land with its full weight. And it had weight, more than they realized. 2 days before the party, a new email circulated with the final agenda attached. Same time slot, same title. The Grant Experience. Every time I read it, I felt a strange calmness settle across my chest, as if the anxiety had burned itself out and left something cooler behind. People think revenge feels hot. It doesn't. It feels like ice when you're doing it right. On the morning of the party, I woke early, showered, pressed my shirt. Not for them, never again for them, but for myself. At the kitchen table, I scheduled the email, recipient list, corporate HR, the VP of Operations, the head of legal, and the general internal ethics mailbox. Attachments, the agenda, the screenshots, the notes I wrote right after the dinner, and a short, factual statement outlining that I had formally said no to being used as entertainment, and that HR had dismissed the concern. No opinions, no accusations, just facts lined up like bricks. Then I set the send time, 9:19 p.m., 1 minute before my segment. I arrived at the event a few minutes after 8. The venue was dressed up with silver streamers, rented uplighting, round tables with white tablecloths, people in uncomfortable clothes holding drinks they didn't want to finish too fast. Mark was already there, of course, making the rounds with a glass of something golden, telling jokes he'd told all year, but louder. He spotted me and raised his glass. Look who showed up! The man of the night! It was almost pathetic, how much he enjoyed his own theatrics. I nodded, offered a small neutral smile, and kept moving. A few coworkers greeted me softly, with a strange mix of pity and nervousness, like they'd been told to brace themselves for something but didn't know what. Around 9, Mark climbed the small stage set up near the projector screen. "All right, people," he shouted, tapping the mic. "We're saving the big moment for later, but trust me, tonight's show is one you won't forget." Laughter rolled through the room. He soaked it in. He had no idea the ground under him had already begun to give way. I checked my watch. 9:12. The next 7 minutes felt like standing in the hallway of a burning building, quiet from the outside, but you can smell the smoke. Mark kept working the crowd, dropping hints, warming the room like a comedian waiting for his cue card. Olivia hovered near the stage with a clipboard, her smile tight, her eyes darting too quickly. Maybe she felt something, maybe not. At 9:18, I excused myself from a small circle of coworkers and positioned myself near the back of the room. From there, I could see everything. Mark preening on stage, the VP at her table checking her phone, the projector humming softly. 9:19. My scheduled email left my outbox. No sound, no notification, no grand reveal. Just a digital key turning in a lock they didn't know existed. A moment later, the VP's phone buzzed, and then the head of legals, then the corporate HR reps. 3 heads tilted down almost simultaneously. 3 faces changed in ways I can't fully describe. Confusion first, then stillness, then something colder. On stage, Mark didn't see any of it. He tapped the mic again. "And now," he announced, "for the moment you've all been waiting for." The projector flickered. But instead of the slideshow he'd prepared, the screen stayed black. A tech guy near the soundboard frowned and started clicking through inputs. Mark laughed too loudly. "Technical difficulties, people. Hold on." No one laughed with him. Olivia stepped up onto the stage, whispering urgently in his ear. His smile twitched. He tried to recover. All right, all right. Plan B. Let's get our guy up here anyway. Mark? It was the VP. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The room shifted toward her like metal to a magnet. Mark blinked at her. Just a fun moment, I promise. Step off the stage, she said. Something inside him cracked, but he forced a smile. It's all approved. Step off. Her tone didn't waver. It didn't need to carry anger. Authority is quiet when it's real. A low murmur spread across the tables. Glasses clicked. Someone coughed. The party's temperature dropped 10 degrees. Mark tried to laugh it off as he stepped down, but his face had gone the color of old paper. Olivia wouldn't look at him. Jason suddenly found the floor interesting. One of the corporate HR reps approached me. Can we speak privately? She asked. I nodded and followed her to a near-empty hallway. She didn't waste time. We received your email. Yes, I said. I sent it 1 minute before my segment. Her jaw tightened. Do you have any reason to believe the content of the planned presentation included confidential or medical information? I heard them planning it, I said. I told our internal HR I didn't consent. They proceeded. The rep exhaled sharply. We're pausing the event. There will be an internal review, effective immediately. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. When we returned to the main room, lights had come up, music had gone down, and Mark was standing beside the stage, like a child waiting for someone to explain the rules to him. People avoided his gaze, whispering now in tones that weren't fun or relaxed. They were suspicious, cautious, calculating. He tried once more. Everyone, let's just... Mark, the VP said again, you're done for tonight. This time he didn't argue. I didn't stay for the cleanup. I didn't need to see him escorted into a side room or watch Olivia crumble under questioning. I got my coat, stepped out into the cold air, and walked to my car as quiet as I'd walked into the dinner days before. But something was different now. Not loud, not triumphant, just clean. They thought they'd rewritten the story of the night. They had no idea it was already over the moment their phones lit up. The office didn't explode the next day. It sagged. That's the only word for it. People walked in quieter than usual, as if the party hangover wasn't alcohol, but collective shock. Conversations stopped when I passed by, not out of judgment, but because no one knew which version of the story was safe to repeat. Rumors travel fast in corporate spaces, but guilt travels faster. And a lot of people had laughed a little too easily at Mark's jokes over the years. He wasn't in. Neither was Olivia. Their computers stayed dark, chairs empty, nameplates untouched. By noon, word spread that both had been asked to work remotely, pending review, which everyone knew meant something much worse. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I spent the morning doing exactly what I always did, answering emails, adjusting spreadsheets, drinking stale coffee. The familiar motions grounded me. They reminded me that while Mark had been playing games, I had still been doing the job he depended on. Around 2, I was called into a conference room. The blinds were drawn, the table clean except for a notebook and a small folder. The VP, a corporate HR representative, and the legal liaison were already there. They didn't smile, but they didn't look hostile either. Thank you for coming, the VP said. We need to clarify a few things. I sat. They asked questions. Dates, details, what I overheard, what I'd told HR, how Mark typically interacted with the team, whether I'd ever consented to being used in any public-facing comedy segments. I answered simply, factually, without embellishment. When they asked how long this pattern had been happening, I told them the truth. That I had tolerated small humiliations because I assumed they were normal, or at least easier to swallow, than confrontation. The legal rep nodded slowly. That's more common than you think. They dismissed me after half an hour. No promises, no conclusions. Just a polite, serious acknowledgement that the investigation would proceed. I went back to my desk, feeling neither victorious nor anxious. Mostly I felt a quiet exhaustion, the kind that comes when you stop carrying something you didn't realize was heavy. The fallout began the next morning. A company-wide email went out. Leadership changes, interim HR restructuring, a reminder about professionalism at events, and a new directive forbidding roast-style presentations or any form of employee-targeted entertainment. The tone was neutral, but the subtext wasn't. Mark and Olivia were placed on administrative leave. 2 days later, they were both no longer with the company. Whispers followed. Some employees were shocked. Some pretended to be. A few looked almost relieved, like a toxin had been removed from the air. No one said anything to me directly until the end of the week, when Mia approached my desk with a cup of tea. "Just thank you," she said, "for not letting it be me next time." I nodded. "You shouldn't have to worry about that." She hesitated. "Most people wouldn't have done anything." "I didn't do it to be noble," I said. "I did it because I was tired." She gave a faint smile. "Still counts." Life didn't transform overnight. My job wasn't suddenly glamorous, but the atmosphere changed. Meetings felt less like performances. People spoke more freely, and for the first time since I joined the company, I didn't feel like someone was waiting for me to trip. About a week later, the VP called me into her office. She thanked me for handling the situation professionally and calmly, then offered me a spot on a new cross-team project. More visibility, more pay, less nonsense. I accepted, not because I wanted recognition from them, but because I was done shrinking myself. The real closure came a month later. By then, the dust had settled, the investigation was closed, and Mark's name had been quietly scrubbed from internal documents. Officially, he resigned for personal reasons. Unofficially, everyone knew why he left, even the people who pretended they didn't. One evening, as I was packing up to leave, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hope you're happy. You ruined my career." I stared at the message. No greeting, no name. Just blame, sent like a stone thrown from a dark street. I typed back slowly. "I didn't ruin anything. You planned your own downfall. I just refused to stand on the stage with you." Then I blocked the number, not out of anger, but because some doors don't deserve to stay open. The new project kept me busy. My days became full of normal things again. Reports, meetings, coffee runs, small wins. No one treated me like a joke anymore. Not because they feared me, but because the line had been drawn in a place that couldn't be erased. 3 months after the party, I handed in my notice. The VP looked genuinely surprised. "May I ask why?" "I found a new role," I said. "Smaller team, better culture. I think it's time." She nodded. "If you ever want to come back, the door's open." "That's kind," I said, "but I'm good." On my last day, a few people signed a card. Mia hugged me. Jason hovered awkwardly before managing a quiet, "Take care, man." I shook his hand. I didn't need an apology from him. I didn't need anything from any of them. When I walked out of the building for the final time, the air felt different. Not dramatic, just clean. Like I'd stepped out of a room that had been stuffy for years without noticing. The clouds were low, the street was wet from a recent rain, but I felt something close to peace. That night, sitting at my own kitchen table again, I thought about the dinner, the hallway, the party, the way Mark's laugh had filled rooms, the way I used to shrink around it, the way they thought humiliation was entertainment, and how easily I had accepted that as normal. The truth is simple. I didn't change who I was. I just stopped volunteering for disrespect. People like to imagine revenge as fire and shouting and dramatic exits. But the real revenge, the kind that actually fixes something, looks quieter. It looks like choosing yourself in a room full of people who expect you not to. It looks like sending an email at 9:19 p.m. because someone decided you were safe to mock. And it looks like walking away afterward, not because you lost, but because you finally decided you deserved somewhere better. I didn't stay to watch what happened to Mark. I didn't follow his life on social media or ask mutual friends for updates. People who treat others like entertainment rarely handle consequences well. But that's not my problem. Maybe he learned something. Maybe he didn't. Either way, it's not my responsibility. My new job is quiet, respectful, normal in all the best ways. Some days I work from a small corner desk with a plant that refuses to die. Some days I sit by a window that overlooks a parking lot. Nothing glamorous, just peace. And peace, I learned, is worth more than being liked by people who need an audience to feel tall. The night they tried to turn me into the joke of the year was the night I finally stopped being one. And nothing about my life has been the same since.